Hey there, Banditos. Welcome to the latest episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits. I'm Joe Marcello.
And I'm Mike Farah.
And today we're bringing you just another amazing interview. We have yet another returning guest. I keep saying it because I'm amazed. People love talking to us and they want to come back. Today we're bringing you our interview with none other than Mark Waid. This is a great interview. I had so much fun talking to Mark yet again. And it was just about just the best topic ever. Superman. We get into the movie, some of his current work, and we had a great time doing it.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk to Mark, especially around this time. We didn't quite figure how it was going to sync up, but it was just right after the movie came out. So we got to talk to him a little bit about his impressions on the movie as well as ours, and then dug deep into the new history of the DC universe, which is maybe his sort of magnum opus. Certainly, there's a lot of work that went into it, and I believe the second issue is coming out soon, second of four. So be on the lookout for that. We talk a little bit of Action Comics, his current run with the Teenage Superman, a little bit of World's Finest, and just get into all that goodness that is Mark Waid. So here it is. This is Mark Waid. And with us today, a returning guest. It is his fourth solo appearance, his fifth overall time on the show. It is Mr. Mark Waid. Mark, how are you?
What again? I can't we can't get rid of this guy. Yeah,
I,
here I am.
It fits with a lot of the theme going on this week and next because the Fantastic Four movie is coming out, of
Yeah.
course. But we are going to be celebrating very soon our fourth anniversary and 400 episodes. So it's all coming together around the number 4.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Appreciate it. The purpose of our conversation today is to talk mostly about new history of the DC universe, which
Cool.
is your big project, which has kicked off. First issue, second issue should be coming out shortly, later in July.
Yep.
But we are only a few days out from the launch, the historic maybe launch of the new Superman film. So we wanted to take a few minutes to just talk about it with you, get a little bit of reaction. What are your thoughts? I'm sure you've seen it.
Yep.
Maybe multiple times, maybe even earlier than we got to see it.
I did get to go to the premiere, which was
Okay,
awesome.
awesome.
And I really enjoyed it. I, you know, I was it couldn't possibly have lived up my expectations because I've been expecting it for 45 years, right? And that's not the film. That's not the problem with the film. I think I went in expecting so much that it was unreal. And what I came out with was this was really good. And I had some quibbles, but everybody has quibbles. But all of this to say that now, a week later, when all of the quibbles have sort of drifted away, I just get to reflect back on it and go, boy, I can't wait to see that thing again.
Excellent. Well, what did you think of the interpretation of the main character? Because it is obviously different than what's come before with
Yeah.
Zack Snyder, and of course, different from Christopher Reeve and others. So let's center in with the character for
Yeah,
a second.
I thought Corn Sweat, whose initials are DC, which I love, uh, I think he did a great job. I think that there was a humanity to him that he captured, and mostly, and this is because it's obviously the theme of the film, but still, it's fundamental to Superman, that respect for sentient life, no matter what form it takes. That the I'm assuming we're talking to people. I'm assuming we're doing spoilers or not doing spoilers. You tell me.
Let's call it spoilers. Yeah.
Let's call If we're going to call spoilers, then the conversation about what to do with the giant kaiju and the Justice Gang going, let's kill it, and Superman going, no, 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 we need to find an interplanetary zoo or something for it. That made my heart sing, because that's Superman to me. There's no need to take innocent, like the kaiju didn't know what it was doing. That's like, we don't have to Christy Gnome this thing.
I appreciated that as well about the film, and he wasn't a Superman who was really just reluctant to be Superman. He was happy being Superman. I mean,
Yeah.
he smiled. I mean, that
Yes.
was amazing. I hadn't seen a Superman smile in years.
In a
And
while. But I mean, I've always said, look, if you can fly, then the rest of your problems pale by comparison. If you can fly and aren't not smiling about it, what is wrong with you?
I agree 100%. One thing that they changed, and well, I shouldn't say change, but they leaned into a little bit more in this was kind of the little bit of a twist on Jor-El and Lara's
Yeah.
message to Superman. And in the past, they've kind of made a few iterations where, they're, go to Earth, they're amazing. Then you have, well, they're primitive. And then this they lean into later on that, kill them if you have to, or,
Or however it was put. Right.
however it was put.
Yeah.
What is your take on that?
The jury from in my head canon, the jury's still out because I want to hear Supergirl first, because it seems to me like it's a pretty big ask that it's a huge surprise to him if Supergirl has not at some point had in conversation it come up, "Hey, you know what, our people were dicks." So in my head canon, I'm holding out for the possibility that it's still just Lex games, even though, yeah, there are people in the movie who say, no, it's real. It's still Lex. That would be one of my only quibbles, but I also understand as a storyteller why it served the story so well. I understand now why the original title of the movie was Superman Legacy, right? Makes perfect sense now.
Yeah.
Look, it's a minor thing. If we didn't, it's a minor thing. I'll roll with it.
And I know I have another question for you, but I just had to just make this comparison.
Yeah.
It reminded me very much of Guardians, where Yondu is talking about, yeah, he may be your father, but I'm your daddy type of thing, where, some variation of that, and saying that, yeah, he was your your biological father, but then he's looking at all these, home movies of the Kents and him growing up. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not gonna cry in this movie.
No,
and I saw that, I'm like, oh
yeah, that was one of the moments that really got to me. I think the moment that got to me more than anything was the kid raising the flag and praying for Superman.
Yeah. It was there were a lot of touching moments I didn't expect.
Yeah.
But it was such a great movie.
Yeah, those were the two.
Guys, I'll be back. I gotta go watch.
Go get some tissues. Yeah, the flag raising and the conversation with his dad at the end. That's the one that really tears started falling for me. And I think that was the point. That was almost kind of the climax of the movie, at least
exactly.
as far of Gunn's emphasis and his focus on Clark being an adoptive son of Earth. And
you are the choices you make, not the things that are prescribed to you by birth. Exactly.
Right.
And luckily Ma's there to shine his boots up for him. A daring choice, a daring character choice, but I have no problem with it because I've never seen it before.
No one has really,
ever.
They're the Midwestern, folk, but they never had any type of,
hickness. Yeah. I thought the hillbilly aspect. Yeah. I thought it was funny. I wasn't offended. I just thought it was, I just remember looking at the screen going, what an interesting choice to make. But yeah.
There were a lot of choices made.
Yes.
Definitely lots of choices.
It was a lot of movie. I will say
it's a lot of movie.
In a good way as opposed to bad, in terms of I think a lot of sequels always get pinned down as having overdoing it with so many villains and so many plot lines, and this just came out of the gate with so much of that stuff, but it weirdly worked because the energy worked.
It worked. I think it worked because, and this is what made it feel so fresh, is that in almost every superhero movie that I can think of, the hero is the fantastic element that is in our fairly grounded world, right? Or maybe the hero and the villain. But here, it's exactly the opposite. We are invited into Superman's world from frame one, a world full of flying dogs and giant robots and kaiju and stuff and we just take it completely for granted. And no need to over-explain, no need to, you just take, you figure if somebody's paying money to see a movie called Superman, they can roll with the Green Lanterns and the Hawk people.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Just, we're here, let's go.
Let's go.
That's
Exactly.
it.
This is a
This is
day.
Superman.
You're living a day in the DC universe.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you think that, to your point though, do you think that they've kind of cracked the code in bringing Superman to this modern audience?
I sure hope so. I mean, I think that the fact that the kindness shown by this movie and the whole idea of kindness is heroism, kindness is punk rock, being the national conversation for the last 7 or 8 days has been so gratifying, because that's the Superman I want to see, the one that influences people for
Mhm.
the better, the one that hammers home the message that kindness is not a weakness, it is a strength. That is a message that we desperately need right now. And I James Gunn and his cohorts are smart folks, and I think that is not by accident that this message is hitting us at this moment.
One question I have, Mike, before we move on is the S. Do you think that we'll see that version in these films going forward at some point?
That's probably it. I mean, they've already released the poster for Supergirl, which has that
Yeah,
same
that's
S. So I think
fair
that's
enough.
the S that it's going to be.
That's it. All right.
Yeah,
I can live with that.
I can live with it.
I can live with it.
Hey, we're all gonna live with it. So whether
Yeah.
we like
Whether
it
I
or
want to or not, it's going to happen.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. Right. Make your peace. Yep.
Look, James, you got my approval.
All right, so let's move on. Thank you for indulging us with some Superman talk. It's on everybody's mind right now. So, big new project, new history of the DC universe, kind of a reboot itself. There
In a way.
was
Yeah.
there was the parenthetical old history of the DC
Right.
universe by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. And now is you, Mark Waid, with a couple of artists, which you can tell us about. But I just wanted to ask first, this is a new, I mean, it's a new, obviously, history of the DC universe. It's a big project by its very nature.
Oh my God, yes.
How did you start tackling it? Like, how did you start eating that elephant, as it were?
It was, and continues to be, because I'm just putting the finishing touches on the back matter for issue 3. So we've still got one more issue to tackle, and they get harder with each increasing one. But it, the fact that I'm in my lane, the fact that I enjoy it, the fact that even though last night I was in the worst mood imaginable because I couldn't finish getting through the goddamn timeline for issue 3, and how are we on page 16 of 19 already? It was draining me, and I wanted to murder somebody. But at the same time, look, it's my lane. I really like doing this stuff. You pay me to work in the DC universe and chronicle it, having a great time. So it was a project that DC's been talking about doing for a while, even before I came back to DC. And when I heard wind of it, I made it abundantly clear that if I wasn't the one doing it, I was going to burn the place to the ground. And the fact that the building's still standing is testament to the fact that they heard me. So editors Andrew Marino, Brittany Holzer, and Marquise Draper are the ringmasters here. The three of them heavily into DC continuity, heavily into DC publishing history, and that's enormously helpful. There's nobody here on the gig that doesn't know some part of the DC universe history better than everyone else on the team. So the mandate was, before they really knew what a big giant thing this was going to be, 4 30-page issues. And I said, I don't know how. I mean, I just don't. That is so much. That's only 20 pages more than Marv and George had. And it's been 40 years since then. A lot has happened in 40 years. So I talked them into doing a little bit of back matter, and then a little bit more back matter, and then a little bit more back matter. And that became to me as important, almost, if not more important than the front matter. So now what we have is, again, the mandate was, you asked a question, I'm just going to keep talking. The mandate was 4 issues, and the general thinking was Dawn of Time to Silver Age, Silver Age to Crisis, Crisis to Flashpoint to current day. And with those parameters, I just sat down and I just started pulling everything I know about DC Comics together, one issue at a time. The first goal always was to do the timeline first, because that way I could be sure I wouldn't overlook something by accident. I could do the entire timeline, the first draft of the first one, which was 48 pages. We trimmed that down to 16. And then once that is in place, then I can go through and say, okay, that's an important moment. That's an important character, or, that's a very visual thing to have happened. Let's put that on the page. And that's how we pull the 30 pages out of that timeline to use as the front matter. And then the back matter is as much as we possibly can, the entire history of the DC universe from the dawn of time with annotations. So anything you see in the front matter, you want to learn more about it, here's where. If you're just reading about it in the timeline in the back, it's just we couldn't cover it in the front part. Here's your annotation. You want to hear more? Here's where you go. So everything is meticulously researched. Everything is gone over with a fine-tooth comb. All four of us, and Dave Wheelgaz, who is helping me with this, all of us are really desperately trying to make this bulletproof. We spend long hours on this thing. There's a fellow named John Wells, who was a comics historian, and the Earth 2 Mark Waid is a longtime friend of mine, and he's also looking at this stuff. So in all that work, will there be typos or mistakes? Probably. We're going to do our best. We'll have an errata section in the fourth one if we need one, but I think so far it's going pretty well. It's just so much invisible behind the scenes work goes into this that I don't think is even apparent on the page.
Oh, sure. I mean, I read the first issue, and it reads like it's from a singular voice, but under the surface how much work has gone into it in every one of those words being on the page. Before I do want to give Joe a chance to jump in, but I wanted to ask about the art, and because this is kind of a different project. You do have the framing device, at least in the first issue, on the first page of a traditional kind of comic book page, with Barry Allen talking about his role as historian or what he's seen. But then it moves into what had been done before, which is, narrative alongside some sort of montage scenes. Exactly. And I think the two pencilers, I don't know if this carries over into all of the issues, but it's Todd.
It doesn't. The lineup is first issue is Todd Knock and Jerry Ordway splitting the art duties, not cleanly at page 15, but just basically being assigned the characters that they have the greatest affection for. Second issue is Brad Walker and Michael Allred. Third issue is Dan Jurgens, and I am horrifically blanking, and I am so apologetic to whoever it is, and I'm so sorry. And the fourth one I think is still in play. So it's every issue is two different artists doing 15 pages of the upfront stuff.
I mean, that's what a lineup.
Yeah, it's a great lineup. We needed people who could draw not just great artists, but characters who could draw the DC characters in the style of the moment they are being captured.
What were there? How did they choose? How did you choose? How did the editorial choose? Who chose what pages they were going to do? Because I must imagine it must have been kind of a discussion and maybe even a little tussle here and there over who gets to do what.
Everything about this book, everything about this book has been, either the three editors getting in a room and yelling at each other, or the four of us getting together and having a spirited discussion. But that's fine. I mean, that's fine. We all care about this stuff, and we all are friends, and it's fun to have those conversations. It's editorial picking those assignments, although I'm not. Some of them are just gimmies, right? Death of Superman. Well, gee, you got Dan Jurgens. Which is he going to draw that part? I'm sure he is. That's, Mike Allred going to draw the weird superheroes from the 60s? Of course he is. So that's above my pay grade. I trust everybody to do their best there. And I've seen the second issue and it's just gorgeous. Third issue's coming together beautifully. Yeah, we got some killer art on this thing.
What I would love to know is, so I remember a few years back when there was, another crisis and a lot of stuff was happening. Their character, I think it was like end of New 52 officially, and then stuff was happening, and they said everything counts.
Yeah.
Everything matters. Is that still really going to hold true? In other words, is anything going to get kind of erased and via timelines, or will everything kind of really be, at least
it's hard,
mentioned?
right? It's hard to do a definitive history if every single thing happened. I think the way you have to look at it is a history of this universe. Even Barry says up front, it can be fungible sometimes, especially depending upon who's telling the story.
Okay.
And that's a beat that we will hit at the end too, as we get into the future stuff that Barry can recount, but who knows when we actually get there, what will actually be the case. For instance, we wanted the origin of the JLA to be the Jeff Johns, Jim Lee origin because he's my boss. But also because Cyborg's a great character, and it's nice to have Cyborg have that level of importance in the DC universe. But then we were having a hard time reconciling that with, well, he seemed pretty new and fresh and unknown when he came to the New Teen Titans. You don't want to give the origin of the JLA and the early years of the JLA so much Cyborg that it becomes not special at all when the New Teen Titans, or it takes something special from the New Teen Titans when they form. So we have to account for that time. So origin of the Justice League, Jim Lee, Jeff Johns, yeah, that happened the way we saw it on the page. A lot of the other Justice League stuff in that same run maybe didn't exactly happen quite that way. Because then we get to fold in JLA Year One, and we get to fold in a bunch of others. And a lot of it is just trying to figure out how to, as seamlessly as possible, although it is not always possible, weld these pieces together. Certain events you have seen will have played out differently. If Supergirl died in the crisis, obviously she has to come back to life at some point. And since we've never told that story exactly, we found a way to use something that had already happened in the DC universe, in the DC history, post-crisis, to be able to pull that together. So that's the kind of stuff. The other thing I'm doing that I'm really having fun with is just making sure that in every issue, there's at least one thing you've never heard of before, that
Okay.
no one's heard of before. And for casual readers, they don't know. It's all new to them. But if you didn't know that Captain Comet had put together a team of superheroes in the late 50s, you couldn't have known because I just told you that. That's the kind of thing that's a fun Easter eggs for other writers to pick up on down the road, or just fun things to help cover characters that we don't otherwise have a place in the actual history.
One thing I would love to know is how does this come together? And I don't mean how do you guys work together, but I mean literally, how do you sit in a room and you just write, not write, but
Yeah.
On a whiteboard, just every single event, and be like, okay, we got it, because
Yeah.
obviously you all bring your knowledge of
Mhm.
comics from over the years, and things happen. But look, you also have life events that happen too,
Right, but
that take up brain
that's
space. But like, you just
that's
go
what
through the database at DC and be like, there it is.
there's no such thing. We had to invent it. I mean, the first two was mostly my homework. In fact, for the second one, I literally sat down, and went through every single DC Universe comic published between 1956 and the Crisis.
Holy crap.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I read every balloon of every issue, but I certainly skimmed every comic just to make sure that I hit every character, that I hit every event, although there weren't that many in the Silver Age, but every development, and help figure out in post-crisis continuity how some of this stuff now timed out. So there was that. That's issues 1 and 2. Issue 3 and 4, Dave took more of the heavy lifting there, and it really was what you just said. It's first you make a list of every single major and semi-major character, and you make a list of every single line-wide event, and then you just sit there with a chainsaw and you go through it. And
So
then
have
some,
you?
yeah, go ahead.
No,
And then
no,
some of
please,
this,
please.
and then some of the stuff is obvious. Obviously, obviously, Infinite Crisis is going to have a page or two devoted to it up front. You get to stuff like Final Night. Good story, great crossover. Was there much lasting impact? Can that just go in the back section? That's the thing, is especially as we get at post-crisis, as we get into that late 80s, 90s, early aughts, so many events, so much
Yeah.
happened. So we have to start winnowing through the lens of, okay, this was an event, but did it have repercussions that reverberated beyond this? Invasion, yes. Millennium, not so much. So that's the kind of thing that is the next step. And then once all of that is done, and once we have a timeline that we know kind of fits the available space to us, then it is a matter of, all right, I'm going to sit here. I got 30 pages and I'm going to list the things, and I'm just going to keep massaging that list and writing from Barry's point of view and hitting the things that I think I need to hit. And I figure, these 3 things make sense to put on the same page. They may not have happened exactly in that specific order, but that's what the back matters for, right?
Mhm.
It's Barry's telling it more thematically. So you will see, if you compare it to the back matter, the stuff that Barry covers, in general, he's covering it chronologically, but there are times when you want to, talk about Batman's villains and Superman's villains and Green Lantern's villains and Flash's villains all over a couple of pages, just to illustrate that villainy has come to the DC universe. Uh, that those villains didn't all happen at the same time, but that's the general idea of it, right? So I know that's a long answer to the question, but that's really what it is. It really is just sweat equity, man. It really is just sitting here and cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting until I have 30 pages.
I hope someone has built
Mhm.
the official like DC employees timeline,
This
for reference,
this
almost
is
like the style guide of the timeline in that,
this is
you
this is
know,
one of the reasons why DC is willing to put such resources behind it, is because it will serve that purpose as well. It is intended to be. That's one of the reasons. It's one of the ways they were able to sell it to, you
okay.
know, the and get it greenlit, was this is not just for retailers or fans. This is an internal reference that we can use.
Yeah. I could see the fancy graphics and everything in my head right now
Yeah, yeah.
to be a part of that. Okay. Sorry, Mike.
No, that's okay. It intended as a project to be like the first Crisis and 0 Hour in terms of like reconciling continuity, fixing, threading things together? Or is
Mhm.
it more the intention to just selectively, like almost start from scratch and kind of selectively put things together from what you've seen in the past?
It's a little bit of both. I think it may be. I mean, it may actually be more of the second. It really is just, here is all of the puzzle pieces, and the things that really need reconciling. Was Barry Allen really, did he kill Professor Zoom? Was he married to Iris West? Was he not married to Iris West? Did he go into the future and have kids and grandkids in certain continuities, post-crisis continuities? Yes, and certain ones, no. That's the kind of stuff where we just have to reconcile and figure out what makes the most sense for that character and for overall continuity. What is the impact across the DC universe if we take this thing out, right? that may seem like it's like Jenga. It may seem like a simple thing you're taking out of publishing continuity, but will that have ripple effects down the road? Good example. Trying to account for Jeff and Todd Knock had done a really cool thing in this series they did called Stargirl and the Lost Children. And I think they also did it in Jeff's new Golden Age book. And there was a super team in the 40s called the Seven Soldiers of Victory. And Green Arrow and Speedy were members of that. But that doesn't make sense in modern continuity, or else they're 80 years old. So Jeff had said something to the effect of they had been plucked through time, and they ended up by accident in the 40s for a short period of time, and they served with the Seven Soldiers. Okay, when did that happen, Jeff? Because they're wearing their old costumes from the Silver Age, but this had to have happened between like when Green Arrow and Green Lantern went on the road, and those Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil stories, and Ollie's wearing a new costume, but then this happens in Justice League. I know I'm talking in shorthand, but that just, it seems like a little thing, but that's one of those things where we spent an entire evening trying to figure out, okay, where did that happen? Because there's so many places, if we put it in the wrong place, all of Green Arrow's history just collapses, because and then a lot of Justice League history collapses. Green Arrow was here, he had the costume, and then they built the satellite. But wait, so but he has to be taken from after the satellite period. Well, no, that doesn't make any sense either. You see what I'm saying? It's the kind of, I'm giving you four sides of conversation all at once, but that's the kind of stuff.
No pressure
Yeah.
whatsoever. I wanted to ask how, if any, or what, if any, role the original project played in your thinking or the approach to this project. Was it just a jumping off point, as in they did it, we want to do something like this, or did you reference back to it in a certain, style or degree?
Not really. I mean, it was inspirational, obviously. I mean, and I can't discount that. And we had a conversation with Marv just to sort of loop him in and get his blessing and get any advice he might have. But I think the bigger influence was the history of the Marvel Universe that I did a few years ago, which is the same format, right? Narrative pages around framing a bunch of montage scenes and narration carrying you through the ages and back matter. So that was the real influence.
One more question in terms of influence, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but interestingly, the Superman movie starts out with these historical, three themed text, pieces, right? And a lot of people have jumped onto the I think it's 300 years ago is the first metahuman,
something like that. Yeah.
Was that in any way shown to you? Did you know that was going to happen? Did it have any effect on this project?
Nah, it's different. It's different fish to fry. It's different stuff. So I'm not worried about it. And we don't factor into that either. So
sure. I just thought it was sort of an interesting,
I know,
coincidence.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
I will also say we don't assign, with the exception of World War II, which you can't get around, we don't assign hard years to anything, because again, that doesn't age well either. We don't say in 1956 this happened, in 1962 Bruce Wayne did this. It's not that. It's chronological, but we're not assigning specific dates and stuff.
Makes sense.
So, since you are the #1 Superman fan, as we determined on the first time you came on the show,
right?
And I still remember that. I tell all my friends. So I want to ask about your current work on Action Comics.
Yeah.
So what drew you to want to explore young Clark Kent?
That we hadn't done it in a long time. And I was always a big fan of Superboy stories when I was growing up. The idea that you can tell lower stake stories with a kid who is learning how to do this. But in the past, traditionally, and this is no slight on those stories, it's just the way the stories were told, they weren't stories about a kid learning to be Superboy. They were just stories about a very short Superman. So
yes. Yeah.
So that was the idea of, okay, how do we do a series where we get to see Clark make the decisions that shape him into who he is today? I don't want to read that in the monthly Superman book. He's a grown up. He's got his act together. How did he get his act together? And that was the pitch. And we didn't know where to put it. I just knew I wanted to do it, and it was a ephemeral thing. And it was editor Paul Kaminsky who said, "Well, we're always looking for a way to do something interesting with Action Comics. And since we have Superman Unlimited coming out at the same time now as 3 monthly Superman books, so why don't we turn that into the main feature in Action Comics for the foreseeable future?" And I was grateful for that, because I mean, that's where it all began anyway for him.
So you made a good point. Like when I was a kid, I remember reading a lot of young Superman, or I guess he was Superboy or whatever you want
Yeah.
to say. And he always kind of managed to run into a young Bruce Wayne.
Right, exactly. Young Hal Jordan, young
Right.
Barbara Gordon. Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Apparently everyone was already on the superhero track when they were just kids.
Right.
And they, met somewhere along the way and totally forgot about it until they got older. Will there be any of that cornball stuff?
Well, I mean, nothing's planned so far, although uh, a lesser known DC character who shows up in the second issue, shows up big in the third issue, and becomes a supporting character for the next couple of issues. So it's a character who's in the history. You've seen him in the history, issue 1, and it's it allows us another point of view on Clark. We know what the Kents think. We know what the public thinks. What do older superheroes who have been here for a while think about this new kid coming in? There's the idea of, I mean, are we doing reverse Kingdom Come? Where it's like, hey, who is this new punk on the scene? We should teach him something.
Does it, one last question, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah.
Will there be, and maybe can't divulge any of this stuff, will there be maybe nods to or mentions of things that will happen to him down the road? That,
Absolutely.
Pivotal moments, maybe say Death of Superman, or even, one of the possible futures like Kingdom Come or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the goal going in, and we've strayed from it a little bit, but I want to get back into it soon, was to try to hit those beats a little stronger, like to really have young Clark, spend a little more time in Metropolis, and have sort of moments of adult Clark coming into the story, and so it's not just straight up Wonder Years narration, but Clark is actually adult Clark's playing a part in the story too. That has kind of gone by the wayside for the first few issues because there's so much to do. But I would very much like to see adult Clark's perspective on this stuff, not just in that Wonder Years narration, but as he's going through his daily routine as a grown up.
Very cool.
How do you strike the balance when you're trying to characterize a young teenage Superman or Superboy, depending, um, in that he has to be ultimately heroic, right?
Mhm.
But he is also young and learning his powers and probably
Right.
making mistakes.
Oh yeah,
But you don't want him to make, the mistakes that suddenly put him on a path that he's not going to become Superman,
right,
right?
right.
How do you strike that balance?
I mean, we all know he's going to be Superman, so there's not a whole lot of suspense there. So it's not like we all know he's not going to make a mistake that's going to be so tragic that he can never be Superman. So that, to some degree, that balance is already set for me.
Hmm.
But that said, I am willing to push those boundaries further than I might have, like as a reader, as a kid. I think I'm doing things that like teenage Mark Waid would flip out over, uh, in terms of showing that he has moments where he is selfish. He has moments where he is tempted to use his powers for his own self interest. He has moments like that because he's a teenager. Like you said, he's still learning. The Kents are the greatest parents in the world, but still, he has hormones like any other kid, and there are all kind and I don't care how great the Kents are. Everybody butts heads with their parents every once in a while. everybody pushes back against authority, which is funny because Superman ends up growing up to be the world's greatest authority.
Right.
But he's going to push back on some of that sometimes. You're going to see him make choices that Superman, the adult, definitely would not make.
Is there an Uber theme there in sort of exploring nature versus nurture, right? You know, how much of the heroism is just inherent in him, as he's sort of born with, versus what he's learning like on this path to using his powers?
I don't know about that. I don't think any of it's born into him. I don't think that, I love Jor-El giving the speech about, they could be a great people if they only have somebody to guide the way. But he's a baby. He's a baby, dude. I don't know how much heroism he has baked into him. It's not in his DNA. So I give credit to the Kents 100%.
Nurture wins.
Nurture wins. In this case, nurture wins. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment, but I think you kind of alluded to it. So basically, we're going to see Superboy using his X-ray vision on a date, because that's what we want
to. I'm willing to walk right up to it because it's right there, man.
Because that's what every male reader at least is like.
Yeah.
How does that not happen?
I think
they touched on it in Smallville, but that's
exactly. I think I can find a way to skirt that without outright saying it did or didn't happen. Because again, let's be realistic. Come on.
Exactly.
But on the other hand, the thing you have to remember about Clark is that with his super senses and the things he can see with his vision that nobody else can see, the taste, the smells, the way his senses work, there's more to his attraction to someone than beyond the physical, even more so than it is for most people, right? It's even that overall attraction. Like Clark, if Clark is sitting next to Lana, outside in the park, he's just as enraptured by the scent of her, of her pheromones and of her perfume and all that stuff put together that no one else can really get that. That's as entrancing to him as anything physical. So that is another way of looking at it, that he sees so much, not literally, but you see what he sees so much in everyone. He sees everyone through lenses that you and I can only dream about.
So yeah, you make a great point. I was going to actually ask about that. It seems like you have a whole lot more room to breathe with this. You're not, not that you're necessarily constrained by writing an adult Superman, but there are certain things you kind of have to adhere to. This you really don't have to, it seems. You just you can really play with it.
Well, Superman can't really get in a fight with it. A fight with a loved one. He can't really have a yelling match with his parents. They're grown-ups at this point. But there are moments when Clark is, and there's moments when Pa and Mom make mistakes too. Look, any parent will tell you, there's no handbook for this, and you're going to do your best. But every parent's going to have his moments. So there are moments when Pa's a dick. There's moments when Ma's a jerk. That's just life. And the idea that I can have the Kents be so young that they are not grandparents and functionally grandparents is what they always were before John Byrne came along and before the Smallville TV show came along. That way there is friction. Pa in particular is really hard on Clark in terms of, you can do this, you can't do this. Sometimes it's just got to be because I said so. That doesn't sit well with a boy who can destroy a mountain with his fist.
As you talk, it's it brings me. I think about my own father and things I would love to say to him if he were still alive. Basically saying, like, as a kid, I could say, like, wow, you were really strict. But as an adult, now looking back, I can say, well, I get it.
Now I get it.
I get it now. Like, I know why you were like that. I understand it. I'm sorry for any grief that I may have caused you as a kid.
Right.
But I understand your point of view for it. So
I'll give you an example that's specific to Superboy, which would be there's a scene where Ma gives him hell about the fact, remember, the costume is not bulletproof yet. The costume is not Kryptonian blanket yet. They haven't figured that part out. for anybody who hasn't picked up the book yet, the setup is it's his 15th birthday. He has been told by his parents, we have to wait till you're 16. No sooner than that, because there's so much we have to figure out before then. And we have to make the disguise perfect because there's going to be a lot of eyes on you. And they haven't figured out any of this stuff. And then through a twist of fate, Superboy ends up having to do something in public on his 15th birthday. And suddenly the Kents, right from the start, are behind the eight ball. They're racing to catch up. They haven't figured out the glasses yet. They haven't figured out the costume yet. They haven't figured out any of this stuff yet. So there's a scene, just like you were talking about with your parents, is there's a moment when Ma comes in and is yelling at Clark because this is the 6th shirt he's gone through this month, and there's bullet holes in this one too. And he's like, what do you want me to do? They were shooting. And he's like, well, maybe not strike a pose, because and Clark just thinks, oh, you're ragging on me. But the reality is, these people are farmers. There is not a lot of money to go around here. Times are always tight on the Kent farm. And all kidding aside, there's only so many costumes you can afford to make for this kid between crops, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So that's which is the kind of thing that only adult Clark would realize. But teenage
Right.
Clark is like, just stop hassling me. I'm doing my job. What do you want?
Right.
Well, Mark, before we start wrapping up, I did want to save one or two questions about World's Finest, which
Sure.
is ongoing. You've written a number of issues. Congratulations on the success. How do you keep that Batman Superman dynamic fresh? Especially, we've seen them in different pairings over the years, or different times during the years. Joe even alluded to when they're young, they seem to cross paths too.
Right.
But also when you've written that many issues of a title that's centered around Batman and Superman, how do you keep that dynamic energetic?
I guess I'm supposed to say, oh, it's easy if you do X, Y, and Z, but that'd be a lie. It is hard because there are only so many scenes you can have between Clark Kent and Bruce Wayne in a lifetime. They're best friends. I will die on that hill because, and I think I've said this to you guys before too, it doesn't make any sense to me that Batman would not be friends with Superman, if for no other reason than Batman is the world's greatest strategic fighter, and there is no strategy in making an enemy out of somebody like Superman. So that works. I think I just developed a shorthand for, well, Ari, I have actually a whole different answer for you, but I was going to say I developed a shorthand for them where after 40 issues of this, they just talk like, it's another day at the job. It's two friends at the office just talking in shorthand. How do I keep that fresh? Dick Grayson, my friend. That is the answer. I should have answered that first. Putting Robin in that book, so it's not just Batman, Superman, and having Robin have such a major role in that book. He's the third star. That made all the difference because he can bring the levity. He can make the wisecracks. Superman can't do that. Batman doesn't do that. He can be the reader's point of view in to certain parts of the DC universe that he doesn't know. Like the Bizarro world is a really good example. That issue came out today. And the first thing you see is Robin for the first time on Bizarro world being chased by Bizarros because to him, it's like Night of the Living Dead. There are zombies coming after him. So that's a fresh perspective. And man, if I had not put Dick Grayson in that book, I would be having a much harder time keeping that relationship fresh. But he's got such a great voice.
Agreed. Yeah. Injecting a third party into what could be, I don't want to call it stale. It's not stale by any means, but into something that's getting familiar.
Yes, exactly. Quite familiar. Yes.
Throwing the little, youth bomb in there is always helpful.
Plus, Dick is kind of like us. He's the the human amongst the heroes, and
exactly. He's
you
not the
know,
he's not the cold strategic guy, and he's not the guy who can split planets with his fist. He's just, you know, and I love writing him as if he's enjoying his time with Superman more than he is with Batman. And it
so
not
I
really,
actually,
but the joke being that Superman, Batman never takes me anywhere. That's
how does World's Finest differ, at least for you?
Mhm.
Certainly as it compares to other Batman, Superman titles in the past, which were, and certainly not knocking them. They were really great.
No, absolutely.
But this is, I mean, certainly a much deeper dive into that relationship.
It is. And that's really, I think the answer would be first off, Robin. And secondly, I, and this is not in any way a knock on any previous takes on the book. The goal of this series is not to try to wow you with some great new development in the DC universe, or to tell you a bombastic story, an event that you've never seen before, that is, and that is the
Mhm.
race. That is the race of every DC comic and every Marvel comic, every superhero comic, right? Is how do we up the stakes? How do we up the stakes? How do we up the stakes? With this one, because we know how it's all going to turn out anyway, because we're set a few years in the past, there's no point in trying to come up with stakes so big that they're ridiculous, because you know how things are going to turn out. So instead, I use this book to get into character stuff and really show what I think about Superman and what I think about Batman and what I think about them as a team, and to use it as a character showcase for the rest of the DC universe. That's the thing too, the stealth team up book that it has become, whether it's Metamorpho or whether it's, the Metal Men or whoever else I can pull into World's Finest, Justice Society, Flash, because I have something to say about all these characters, and this is my place.
Very cool.
Thanks.
I think a good place to leave it, but I will segue into our usual, last question, which is about, upcoming projects. But I'd love to know, in concert with that, what are some maybe upcoming storylines, if you don't totally spoil them, for, Batman, Superman, or World's Finest, rather.
World's Finest. So, yeah, it's technically it's Batman, Superman, World's Finest, but I just call it World's Finest. The Bizarro issue starts off a three-parter. An issue came out today, a three-parter in the Bizarro world, in which they are drawn to the Bizarro world because there's a virus on Bizarro world, and the virus is making Bizarros think like normal human beings, and it's causing all kind of chaos, because this is not necessarily a good thing. If you caught this virus and you realize you're on Bizarro world, you're going to want to die. This is you're going to freak the hell out. So, and that is just the beginning of the plot. It ends with, it quickly builds into a cataclysmic, like, world shaking. I can't blow up the Earth, but I can blow up Bizarro world if I want to. There's that. Beyond that, we're doing another Supergirl and Robin one-off issue, like the date issue we did with them.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Russell actually has helped me by stepping in, and we're co-writing that one. And then after that one, honestly, it is a race to the solicitations at this point. Do I know what happens next? Not a clue. Do I need to know in the next 2 weeks, because we're going to have to go to solicits? Yes. So I better figure that out.
Great. And so more of that, more of Action Comics,
Yep.
more of the new history
Bat
of the DC universe. You have
right.
3 more issues on
Right.
that.
3 more issues on that. 3 more issues on Batman and Robin Year One with Chris Samnee.
Okay.
And that, again, has been such a pleasant surprise to us, that it's been so widely embraced, which is really cool. And it's even cooler for Chris, because that is his dream job. I mean, more than anything else in comics, that is his dream job. So he's drawn the hell out of that thing. And Justice League Unlimited, which
Justice League. I can't believe I
which
forgot that one.
rolls out into the next big DC event, which I think they've announced in the last couple of days, DC KO, which is basically a big throwdown fight book. And we are leading into that with Justice League Unlimited by sort of setting it up and taking account what the other heroes are doing while KO is going on. So that's going to be it's going to be a very important book in the DC universe.
And we're back. So what did you guys think? I loved it. Love talking to Mark. I will say this. If you've ever listened to our interviews, you listen to our guests speak, they speak as if they're looking for the answers, which is fine. That's how some people are. Mark has every answer right on the tip of his tongue. No ums and ahs. Every word has a purpose. And I actually absolutely love that about talking to him. He's just the ultimate Superman fan, which he made abundantly clear the first time we talked to him.
I wish I could talk as succinctly as Mark does, because as you probably know, if you're longtime listeners, I have a lot of uhs and ums, and I'm always searching for the right way to put things, and it just drives myself crazy. Hopefully it doesn't drive you guys crazy. Anyway, this is about Mark. Mark, thank you for being on the program yet again. Looking forward to all his continued work with DC characters, from the New History to Action Comics to Batman and Robin Year One. I'm trying to search my brain. Justice League Unlimited, I think.
There's a lot to cover.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the Mark Waid verse. So go out there, pick up all that great material. Mark, thank you for being on. The door is always open. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for viewing. Thank you for rating, reviewing, subscribing, supporting the show, doing what you can to get the Dollar Bin Bandits into more ear holes. But that'll do it for this episode of the Dollar Bin Bandits. We will see you Wednesday for a live episode celebrating our 4th anniversary and our 400th episode. It's going to be fantastic. Preview. And then more episodes after that. So I will stop talking. You keep listening, and we'll see you next issue.